to informational, though. Thank you. Other items for open discussion for council? Oh, good. Let's move on to presentations. Space Needs Study, Sue Kwan-Beck-Etten, Director of Central Services. Welcome, Sue.
Good afternoon, Sue Kwan-Beck-Etten, Central Services Director. As you may recall, late last summer, August, September timeframe, we embarked upon a formal space needs study for City Hall Annex. And we've just are wrapping that up now. We wanted to come before you and give you an update and overview of that space needs study. And I brought with me Sean Irvin. He's a principal architect with TSP, and he conducted the study for us. I'm going to turn it over to him.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Sue, and good afternoon, councilors. Just trying to bring you a little bit up to speed in case you don't recall this or haven't heard about it before. This space needs assessment was based upon the need from the previous study, since most of the moves that were in the previous study were largely done. Effective moves using the space in the annex building that was evacuated by health once they moved into another space. Many areas were overdue for some review, and especially on the ground floor, if you've ever been on the ground floor of City Hall. This assessment focused on departments and spaces in a general sense, not defining a specific design, but just looking at the departments and how they should be arranged within the City Hall to be as effective as possible. Departments were found to be relatively fractured and split through multiple levels and or multiple areas within the building. Some departments were overcrowded, and now the City Hall is doing a great job at doing paper elimination scanning, trying to get rid of all the file cabinets and paper and all those kinds of things, putting them into a different, more accessible way to get to everything. Citizen convenience was encouraged as we looked at the different spaces, trying to make things more convenient for everyone wherever possible. And fewer required trips to the City Hall were also some of the considerations, looking at how can departments change to kind of keep with the times and as things are changing. Goals were really to be user-friendly and good staff communication internally, as well as making a solution that looks out 3 to 5 years instead of just where we are today, because ultimately we want to have a change that really can last. Space was inconsistent. It was spread out through many other spaces. You know how it kind of goes when somebody starts running out of room and they need a little more space. Oh, that space down in the basement might be available. I know it was a broom closet before, but maybe we can stick a desk in there. And so some of that was considered, and maybe changes to that would be appropriate. So we pulled departments together wherever possible and tried to look at ways to bring them into contiguous space and increase collaboration among that particular department and increase the customer service to the community. And we tried to eliminate the use of lowest quality space, especially spaces that didn't have daylight or were especially inconvenient to get to, like, for example, via a spiral staircase, which nobody really likes to use whenever we can help it, and really improve the quality of space wherever possible and capture more daylight for everybody where that makes sense. So questions and interviews were done with a number of people from a number of the individual departments, and the study of space was done. We actually walked the entire building, looked at everything that was available. Many points of view were considered throughout this whole process. The study was interactive to optimize the final solution wherever possible. The annex appeared to be relatively adequate to its existing use and growth in place where it exists. City Hall arrangement needed some attention, and so we looked at that a little more in depth. The leased space appears to be the best value for any additional space that's needed at the moment, rather than adding an addition or things like that. And so based upon that 3 to 5 year projection I talked about, we looked at how much space would need to be leased for now and how much space looking out that little bit farther distance. And for now, looks like about 6,000 square feet will work. to actually make these departments work a little bit better. And then looking at the long-term goals, about 12,000 in long-term space would work. We looked at some numerous lease options that staff identified as potential possibilities and assigned a grading scale to those to compare the advantages of both convenience to the regular city hall as well as convenience to the public and being on ground level wherever possible and things like that, and came up with a series of good options. Those options are not yet finalized. There are some initial discussions going on, but those are still in the works. The best fit appears to be to move the city attorney's office. David had talked to us about that as well, and HRC and community development based upon their own internal goals, the size they need, and the interaction from other departments and from the public. All those things were taken into consideration. Now, once that happens, those three departments were able to do some rearranging and make it work through a phased plan at potentially doing some remodeling through the building. As that happens, we can relocate planning, zoning, and building services with a potential common service desk on that ground level, which has really the highest interaction and the highest with public and the highest traffic with public of any department in the city administration. Then on the first level, with a space that's vacated by community development, there would go a series of some public works administration people that would be expanded into the public works administration area, as well as planning, zoning, and building services administration, making that main level being a very administration-oriented level so that when people from the community come in, they can find the people they really need to talk to quickly. And then second level, those spaces vacated would be taken up by engineering. Bringing engineering out of, right now they're spread across 3 different floors in a bunch of little tiny spaces, and bringing them primarily into 2 large spaces across the hall from each other. A great improvement for them, and a great improvement for anyone like myself that needs to go get some approvals from engineering. You know exactly where to find them instead of wandering around the building, which would be great. Mostly we addressed the things that tried to look at ways to really improve that level of environment for all these areas, the interactivity of them, and focused on maximizing both staff and public convenience for it. And with that, Sue and I will entertain questions.
Great, thank you. Questions from council? Space needs study. Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I was just curious. The annex, how old is the annex?
Sure, go ahead.
Annex was built in 1915.
1915, okay.
Yep. And that building has been kept up to date, I think a little bit better actually than City Hall had. The health department was in there for a number of years. I'm not sure what all it was before then, but we will be doing some tuck pointing to it and some updates with the HVAC system. I believe this year, I know it's in the capital plan, either this year or next year.
And the City Hall is 1930?
1936, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, for directionally challenged people, the annex is what? And this is something I didn't know until I was on council and had been directed to go there. What is the annex, and how, where is it compared to City Hall?
It's on the same block and on the same side of the street. So if you're at City Hall and you head north, you'll come to our City Hall ramp that's in between City Hall and the City Hall Annex.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. Any other questions for Sue or for Sean? Councilor Karski?
Thank you. Love the report. I know a lot of these things don't get looked at very often, and like you said, your departments will grow, one shrinks. Well, let's put this over here, and pretty soon you kind of got a mess. How close are we to implementing a lot of these changes? Have we started on many of them yet?
Go ahead. No.
We will be posting the plan, first of all. It's about an 80-page report, and to save trees, and we're not going to print a bunch of copies. But the full assessment will be available on siouxfalls.org very soon. I'll send you all a link to go find it if you want to read the entire study. So the study has been done, and we are wanting to embark on phase 2, which will be designing, doing the engineering, the electrical, mechanical design for the remodeling that we'd like to do in City Hall to renovate those spaces. So we have been in discussions with Sean, who's a logical choice to embark on phase 2 with us, which would be the design of phase 2. So primarily we're talking about the ground floor, which is going to get the most attention because it has gotten the least attention over the last many years. And that's where planning and zoning, building services will be centrally located and a more user-friendly customer service desk. There's a door off of the alley into ground floor that's very convenient for developers and contractors to use, and they love that. There's parking, diagonal parking right there by that door. So we want to maintain that because that's very useful, but what we want to do is renovate ground floor. So number one, it's a better quality of space. We want to add more daylight to that ground floor so it's not so dark and you don't realize that you're a little bit below ground. And so the bulk of remodeling will end up happening on ground floor, but we'll also be potentially doing some remodeling to the northwest quadrant of first floor City Hall, which right now is kind of, it's not contiguous space. You can access it off of that hallway where the restrooms are in the back to get into a couple of offices, or you can come in through the west side of City Hall and then through a doorway to get to a couple of other offices. But that's another area that we think is just needs some attention and does need some remodeling to make it more of a throughput area where potentially we'd have planning, admin, people like Mike Cooper there and some of his direct reports. And it's a really nice space, but you wouldn't know it from really looking at it right now. There's high ceilings there, there's nice windows, but we think that we can really improve the quality of that space too. So I guess the answer is that we're starting to discuss phase 2. Phase 2 would be the design work to get us into the actual construction and remodeling that would hopefully be later this year.
Councilor Kreski, did that answer your question?
Work in progress, yes. I guess follow-up to that is, as a person who, when they buy a car, they like to keep it running as long as possible, and you keep putting money into it, and you keep putting money into it, and eventually you wonder, well, when should I buy a new car? We talked about the age of some of these buildings. How much life is left in them?
Sure. It'd be my opinion that we've got a lot of life left in them.
Okay.
Really, what we're doing at the moment is reupholstering the interior. The bulk of the car, the engine, everything else appears to be in very good condition. The investments that were recently made at City Hall as well as Annex, very little of that will be lost with any of what we're talking about. We're just continuing to let the building change with the changing times and the changing needs of the staff. But both of those buildings were built to last a very long time, and so they'll be valid investments for a very long time, many decades.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, lots of questions. Thank you, Sean. Councilor Jameson, please.
Sean, if I could, can you tell us the number of square feet in the annex?
Not off the top of my head.
Roughly, any idea? I'm just trying to get a grip of the 6,000 or 12,000 feet that would be needed. 6 for the short term, 12 for the long term, just to help us all get a grip of what that kind of space is.
Yeah, overall, Greg, the annex is a total of 21,288 gross square feet and about a little over 12,000 net square feet. And then City Hall is gross 64,000 and net about 38,000. So the 6,000 is a relatively minor portion when considered among the entire amount.
The Carnegie building is probably somewhere closer to the 6 or 12. I'm just trying to size up 6 or 12,000 square feet for us to think about. And then, if I could, the other question is, during this assessment or study, was there consideration to selling or trading current city assets, city buildings for a new, complete one, all-in-one type building? Was none of that conversation happen?
That was really outside the scope of study. The scope of study was really to look at how can we reconfigure with the assumption that City Hall would continue to be the primary building of the presence of the city staff.
Well, the other one so then there was no consideration of consolidation or sharing with Minnehaha County or any other local government?
No, not as part of the study.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, lots of questions. Councilor Anderson.
My question's been answered, thank you.
Okay, all right. Councilor Aguilar saying the same thing. Got it. Okay. Councilor Rolfing.
That was what Councilor Jamerson spoke of briefly was kind of my question. You know, you talk about this car is in good shape. However, our family may not be the right size for this car. We may keep growing, and it sounds like we're growing and outgrowing the car. We may need a minivan now or a full-size van, and we've got a full-size car. So I'm just wondering if how long this is going to last. When we start getting into 3 and 4 different locations, sometimes efficiencies go down, and we all know that. And so it's a situation where I think maybe we need to start considering what Councilor Jameson was alluding to, and look at that. Just an idea.
Okay, other questions from council? All right, thank you very much. Interesting report. We look forward to all 80 pages online. That'll be awesome.
Very good, thank you.
And we look forward to the changes. Thanks. Moving forward with